Welcome to this video. I am going to be sharing these two favorite decks of mine, both by the artist Steventon. So the deck on the left here is the Spiral Tarot by US Games. This is currently still in print. It originally came out in 1997. You can see this is a well-loved deck. And this deck on the right, unfortunately, is out of print, but it's this one, which has a long title, and I just refer to this as the Ancient Goddess Wisdom deck. So I have been working with both of these throughout the entire month of June, so I felt like this was the perfect time to gush about these two decks. Before we get going, I wanted to mention a couple things. I have trimmed this deck. It originally came with cards this size, so you can see I have trimmed the edges off. If you were to buy the deck in stores today, it will look like this. So I took off the purple border because it's just distracting for me personally, and I feel like I can just enter the artwork better without the purple borders. That's the first thing I wanted to mention. Second is my copy is from over 10 years ago, and so you can see it's a little bent. It's also very shiny and laminated. And after working with this deck for an entire month, I realized I wanted to get a backup copy because it's one of my favorite RWS inspired decks. Don't usually get backup copies, but because it's getting pretty chipped, and again, some of the cards have gotten damaged over the years. So I wanted to mention that because I ordered a copy, and this is the most recent one that is out there now. This one says made in Italy, and my original says deck printed in Belgium. But what's interesting is inside the card says printed in Italy, so who knows. So this one, however, is made in Italy, but it's different. And this was kind of my first experience, because I don't usually get backup decks or multiples, to see how different editions vary. Now, I know that's a thing with like Thoth Tarot, but I get it now. So the guidebook is the same, but you'll see it's not as laminated, I guess. It's like, and it's also lighter in print. The whole guidebook is lighter in print, but everything's the same. All the information inside is the same. But the cards are more of a matte and maybe a thinner cardstock, which actually I like matte better, but one of the main differences is the color tones. This one it's more muted. It's not as vibrant or saturated, and the blues are more purple. And so let's see if I can show an example. Like this card, you can't see the details of this column as well in the newer version as you can in the older version. It's all just a little bit more muted and more of this purple haze. I don't know if you can see that. And also these like tree of life symbols are harder to see, I feel like. This is another one. I just love the richness of her dress with the teal and the green echoing the peacock feathers, and that's just not as visible in this edition. And as you can see, it's more purple. Okay, this is one of my favorite cards, and you can see the difference pretty starkly here. This has more of these variations of greens and blues, and this is more of a blue-purple kind of gray. Like, it is just more dull, as you can see. I guess the issue for me is more, this is what I have been accustomed to, is this version. And so seeing this, it's just different. It has a different quality, but it's still beautiful. And if I didn't have this first experience, I wouldn't have even noticed. But you can also see the details here in the background are very hard to see. So just wanted to note that if you do get this, it's going to look different than my original version. So I guess it's just hard to find consistency depending on the edition. So with that, I wanted to talk a little bit about the guidebook. So I think it's a great little white book. That said, you can see it's very minimal information here. And in the majors, there's a lot going on, a lot of details, and a lot of esoteric symbolism. We have the Tree of Life, Hebrew letters, the elements, and these figures that, these are all mythological figures here. So this guidebook, it doesn't really tell you too much about all the symbolism there. So if you want to know more about it, you would want to get the more extensive guidebook, which unfortunately is out of print. I found this one for a decent price, and I hesitate to say decent because it was just affordable for me at the time, but I got it because I am just a physical copy person. I need to have things in my hand, but there is a Kindle version available that is on Amazon. So if you have this deck or want to get this deck but want to know more about the symbolism of all of the cards, but especially the majors, then there is a Kindle version. So this book, it goes into all of the details about the symbolism. You can see I've already marked it with pencil. So much information, like what you would want to know about the deck extensively. And it goes more into Kay's choices in the majors, the mythologies, why she chose those, which I'll go into a little bit more, and the minors, like just information that you might want to know, because there's a lot left unanswered when you just look at the majors, which are beautiful unto themselves. And like I said, I've had this deck for a long time, but having this guidebook truly enhanced my experience of connecting with this deck. So just mentioning that. So there's lots going on in the major arcana. Kay Steventon based the major arcana largely in mythology, and she writes about that the mythologies she's included are the ones that she was familiar with. So that includes Mediterranean, like Greek and Roman gods and goddesses, ancient Egyptian gods and goddesses, Mesopotamian, I believe, and Arthurian. So an interesting combinations there. Just kind of quickly go through these. I'll do a full flip through at another point in this video. This will all be time stamped so you can skip around to what you want. Here we have Ma'at, goddess, ancient Egyptian goddess of justice. This is Hecate, the primordial Titan goddess. This is supposed to be Isis in the star card. Yes, lots of pink bodies in this deck. Definitely not diverse in some ways. So you can see the detailed layers here. Steventon dedicated the minor arcana to her Celtic grandmother, who was born in the 1800s. Her grandmother is the one who introduced her to divination, specifically card divination. So you'll see that the outfits here are sort of around, and scenes are more 1800s type scenes. And I should also note, it's more kind of impressionistic kind of artwork as opposed to, I don't know, the majors are more like a Renaissance style feeling to me. In the court cards, these all, from what I can tell, take place during Arthurian times. So this is where we really see that mythology come into play. Yeah, so just wanted to give a little bit about the premise of the deck. I really feel she did an amazing job in depicting each card. The minors particularly really evoke emotion. Like this card illustrates that feeling of loss, heartbreak. Very clear. It's a very clear reader. And it's just given me fresh perspective on card meanings. Interesting color choices for sure. This deck is so precious to me. It was the first deck I ever owned. And because it includes Kabbalah and things like that, you can find some common threads to Thoth and other systems as well. So I'm going to share just a few of the majors that I think make this deck unique. So we have some of the traditional symbolism. We have the towers in the background. We have the wolf. We have this crab emerging from the water. Sometimes that's a lobster. And of course the moon as this prominent celestial form in the center. But this is a triplicity aspect to the goddess, and so we have a triplicity that I don't see very often. The triple goddess sometimes ties in 3 different goddesses. So we have Hebe, Hera, and Hecate. So that's kind of a unique aspect that there's the goddess mythology tied in here, which makes sense, and I like that added layer. And this kind of brings you more into the watery world of the moon and not getting overwhelmed by the oceanic emotions, but having the opportunity to gain a greater depth of knowledge than before. I'll just read a little excerpt from the book. The fool cannot stay in the realm of the moon for too long, for if he does, he may lose his way altogether. Hecate, who sits in the darkness, holds a flaming torch to guide the way to the underworld of the unconscious. She will offer safe passage back to reality only to those who dare to face the unknown parts of themselves with truth and honesty. I like this card very much. Okay, next we have the Hermit. And right off the bat, what's unique about this version is we have goddess Vesta. And instead of the traditional imagery of the hermit facing away from the reader is facing Vesta, and she is almost beckoning to you. She has her eternal flame on her chest. I like the kind of cave-like tunnel aspect to that, like following that flame into a tunnel. Vesta was greatly venerated in ancient times and worshipped as the spirit of the flame that burned in the central hearth in every Greek and Roman household. She holds the serpent of enlightenment here in her hand, which guards the secrets of death and renewal. The hermit's bare feet indicate her connection to Mother Nature, and a flock of birds disappears into the clouds, symbolizing the transient cycles of seasons and time. And this deck also does include the Tree of Life and the Kabbalah associations. I don't use those, but you can go really deep. Like there's the elemental symbols, there's astrology, or the Hebrew letters. So the major arcana has a more Thoth type vibe, even though this is definitely a classic Waite Smith kind of deck. Just the layers and the symbolism in some of the majors remind me of the Thoth deck. Another card here that I really like is the High Priestess, and she has the classic pillars on either side. There's the tapestry with pomegranate in the background, but the central figure here is Sophia, who symbolizes wisdom. And the guidebook goes on to say how Sophia kind of represents this like amalgam of all goddesses. She is associated with the Egyptian goddess Isis and Hathor, and also much later the Virgin Mary. So these columns are Egyptian, so they kind of beckon to Isis or Hathor. There's the Sphinx here, which has two faces, which is her throne. And that is supposed to be the goddess Urania or Urania in her light and dark aspects. And of course, Persephone, goddess of the underworld, is connected with the pomegranates here. The three-headed wolf or three-headed dog here is Cerberus or Kerberos. And here we have a Sibyl's tripod where the fire is burning. So she holds the key to universal knowledge here. You can see there's lots going on here. Okay, oof, I just lost my light. So I hope this will still be okay. So here we have the Hierophant. And the Hierophant is a card, the classic Waite Smith, that I struggle with. And so I really appreciate variations on the Hierophant. And this one is definitely one of those variations that I really appreciate. So this figure is Chiron, and you can see that by the symbol here. I'm just going to read a little bit from the guidebook here. So his hand is raised in a priestly blessing with two fingers up and two down, indicating hidden and known doctrines. A small sun and moon are on the tip of his index fingers, so it's hard to see, but here's the sun and the moon here, signifying the union of the god and the goddess. And he has the key of the High Priestess here. So I do love that there are threads throughout the deck, throughout the cards that we see reappear. They connect to a previous card or a card that comes after. So I really like that about this deck too. Okay, so here's another card that I really thought is very unique, the Death card. And interestingly, the central figure here is Hecate again. So this is the third time she's mentioned and shows up. And you can see some of the traditional imagery, the flag with the rose here, and the dismembered corpses, her scythe as well. But what I think is really neat is this figure in the background. You see this sort of vortex of light here, and this is a soul rising toward rebirth after the death process. So the Devil card is interesting. I'm going to just zoom in here to get the full effect here. I really think this illustrates the meaning of the Devil card really well. So here we have the figure of Lucifer, the light bringer, and he is showing this person what they don't want to see. He is reflecting something that is hard to look at and showing this figure where they are trapped or what might be repelling them about themselves. Right, very classic. I'm going to try and just maybe feature just a couple more just so you can get an idea. I won't read any more meanings, but I just like this artwork here for Judgment. That's another card that sometimes I struggle with, and I really like the I really like the illumination aspect here, and then the light reflecting upon these people down below. And the Hanged Man, I think this is a neat depiction, suspended over this abyss. Very cool. Okay, so those are the majors. I'm going to briefly go over some of the minors, and so I separated them out. So I thought it would be interesting to see the aces, just because those are always interesting, just to see how those are depicted in a deck. And you can see more of the sort of reddish yellow warm colors here, and then in the swords for the wands. For the swords, we have this very brilliant kind of blue tones. And for the cups, we have lots of colors going on. What is cool is this fairy shows up in the 10 of Cups. What I like about this is she has a key here, and it's almost as if she's unlocked the potential there of the vessel, and the cups are emerging from that. And then Ace of Pentacles, I really like this. There's like a tree in this, it's almost like a world tree, or a tree of life in the Ace. And then in the 10 of Pentacles, this is another thread that I really appreciate. Here's a family tree, right? Here's the ancestral tree, which is cool to have these two, the progression there from this very earthy nature-based tree to the human family tree, right? Like the trees in our lives. Okay, so those are the aces. So the majors, you can see the artwork is highly detailed. It's definitely more refined, and we're stepping out of the mythological realm into the more terrestrial realm. So we see that here in this Two of Wands. We have a different era that's happening here. It's not timeless like the archetypes of the majors. We have a definite time frame here, which looks like turn of the century. There are some details to the artwork that, you know, make me wonder, like this looks very scribbly here and unfinished, but you know, that's just me. I just wonder. What's interesting about this card is this person is looking into the distance, and it's almost like the future is here with this cityscape that obviously is not from this time period. What I love about the artwork here in this deck is it's very clear what's going on. I feel like in this scene, for example, there's no doubt about the implications of this card. So it makes it a really easy reader, and I think it's a great like deck for a beginner as well. The majors might be a little trickier for a beginner. And just the sense of movement. This card in particular obviously shows that, but again, the Five of Wands, there's just so much movement happening there. Love this pinstriped pant man. Okay, other favorites. This is kind of a unique Three of Swords, right? This heartbreak, obviously, or maybe not obviously, but I love her use of light in this card here. And these glowing swords in the background, and the snuffed out candle. I don't know if you can see that. Just the details are very cool. And this blanket that is poppy flowers. The Six of Swords is one of my favorite Six of Swords. I love this light in the distance here, and this angelic guide. Okay, here's another card that has lots of movement. And some of them just have a sense of humor too, which I like about this deck. There's a sense of humor here. This person just knocking these cups in a fit of rage almost. And definitely not seeing these highlighted cups in the background. yeah, I do appreciate when decks aren't so serious. This is a really cool Six of Cups, right? The nostalgia card. I love that they're in full color here, but they're looking at this sepia tone scene from the past. Very cool. I just really appreciate her depictions, right? That's an interesting Seven of Cups. All right, and then the courts, very quickly. So the court cards, I personally don't resonate much with the faces, but it doesn't bother me. This deck is just overall just really well done. I feel like, you know, outside of the lack of diversity in the mythologies, and some aspects of the artwork that irk me a little bit, overall, I think this is just an incredible deck. I love that there are dragons in the wands suit. I am a dragon person, and I love this little dragon, this youthful dragon with this princess here. The faces are, I don't know, a little distracting for me, but I can get past it, as I said. And there's obviously, like, this suit has that very brilliant blue. The cups. And all the cups, it's pretty blue, but all the figures are wearing green. So that kind of does remind you of water, the blue and the green. And then last we have pentacles. And this is very colorful, obviously. But these bright yellow coins are in this suit. I'm going to do a little short full flip through of this if you are curious to see the whole deck. Next, I wanted to show the Ancient Feminine Wisdom. Again, this is out of print, and I got it when I found out that it was going out of print because I love Kay Steventon's artwork so much, but I honestly didn't think I would be using it. So this has been a pleasant surprise because it actually works fantastically well as a clarifier. And it has a keyword, and then it has just a little white book. It goes into the mythology, but then it has a short section of the divinatory meaning. So it's definitely a very accessible little white book. And I definitely am learning some things about some basics of the goddesses here. One thing I will say is the goddesses are organized by different categories, right? Like Olympian goddesses, sort of underworld goddesses, guardians, heroines, and then there's like virtues. And these are organized within the categories alphabetically, but if you want to look something up, you have to know what category they're in. So I actually made my own little index in the back. So I love this artwork very much. In this deck, it's similar to the majors in the Spiral Tarot. It's just a little more refined, and the colors, the tones are a little bit more muted, but just absolutely gorgeous. And I think it can make a great deck just a standalone if you just want to learn about Roman and Greek goddesses. And I'm sorry if I didn't mention that, but yes, these focus on the Roman and Greek goddesses here. And I'm going to go through all the cards. It's there are 52 cards, but I'm just going to go through all of them. This reminds me of the backs, and I have to say, I love these backs so much. And there's the divinatory tripod. This is past, present, future. And this is one of my favorite depictions of Hecate. And I believe that this is the card that sold me on the deck. Thanks for hanging out, and I hope you enjoyed these decks. If you have either one of these decks, I would love to hear your thoughts or reflections about them. All right, I'll see you on the other side of this video.